There we go. So for those of you joining, my name is Lauren George. I am the Family Support Specialist with Child Care Answers. Here's a picture of my kiddos up on the screen. So Claire is 2 and Charlie is 6. So I have experience as a mom of children who may have nibbled on me a few times. And then previously I was the infant toddler specialist for 9 years with Child Care Answers. So I have dealt with children biting in the classroom and at home as a parent, and I have worked with families along the journey as either their children are biting or their children are being bitten, and how to support their development because of that. So Child Care Answers has gone through some transition. As of October 1, we are really family and community facing now. So you'll see that all of our trainings and webinars are called workshops now, and they are specifically designed for either families or community. Today's and tonight's is on biting, and then next week we have one on potty training. If there are specific workshops as a parent that you would like us to offer, don't hesitate to fill out that family information form on our website and let us know what you think. Or on Facebook, just chat in, send us a message and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. And we'd be happy to create something specifically for you. So my new role as Family Support Specialist is really doing that parent education piece. So workshops, webinars, designed to help families along the journey of parenting. So anywhere from prenatal support all the way to transitioning to the school systems or to elementary school. I specialize in infants and toddlers as well as special needs children, and then that transition to kindergarten as well, with some hand holding and some one-on-one support. So if there are also topics that you would like to sit down and talk one-on-one about, or need additional resources, I can support you in that journey as well. And then continuing to help families locate childcare like we have always done. So Child Care Answers trainings no longer give certificates for attendance. We're really here just to get that information out there. If you are a foster family, we can give you some documentation that you attended for fostering, but none of our workshops count for child care providers any longer. So that's a little bit about me and our transition at Child Care Answers. So let's start with our conversation on biting. So we know that biting is not an atypical behavior. It's very common for children to bite. Most children under 3 do engage in some sort of biting, whether that's a one-time bite situation or it turns into a chronic biting situation. It is a typical part of infant and toddler development. So we're going to go in today about why children bite. So the why behind why it's typical. Understanding the different kind of biters, because children bite for many different reasons. So our approach with our child may look different dependent on the type of biter they are. And that then may have to adjust as we have different children who are biting for different reasons. My son and my daughter bit for different reasons, so my approach with them was different. They didn't bite very often. They weren't chronic biters, but I definitely got nibbled from time to time. And then we're going to talk about how to respond when your child bites, and then how I support my child's development overall, and then when to seek help. So when to know that this isn't something that I can handle as a parent, and I'm looking for some additional resources. So just a little bit of biting facts. So most children under 3 bite, like I mentioned previously. They're going to bite at least someone once. 1 out of 10 toddlers are considered a biter. And obviously we don't want to label our child as a biter because then they have this label to live up to and then they may start chomping a little bit more. But we do find that about 1 out of 10 toddlers are considered a biter, which means that they're doing it more than just the occasional chomping. They're considered more of that chronic biter. Biting is not always intentional. So because of the infant toddler brain and the way that their brain is shaped, a lot of their actions are unintentional. They're doing it because they're seeking a need, whether it's they like the feeling of biting someone, they like their reaction, they're just exploring. And so there's not a lot of intent behind their behavior. A 6-year-old hitting someone in the head with a block, there's more intent behind that action, and we can handle it a little bit differently, but with toddlers, it's a lot of involuntary, or they don't know what they're doing or why they're doing it. And then biting is not linked to later aggression or behavior problems. So just because your child's biting now doesn't mean that they're going to be a bully later or they're going to have problems with hitting in kindergarten. It is really not linked to that at all. It's because they're really trying to fulfill this need, and developmentally, they're missing some skills. And that's not because we've done anything wrong as a parent. It's because they're truly just an infant or a toddler, and they just have not developed those skills yet. So that's just a little bit about the facts behind biting. So I mentioned the infant toddler brain. So about 90% of the child's brain development happens in that first 5 years of life. And the majority of that brain development that's happening is in the back or the middle part of the brain. So the last part of the brain to develop usually happens after age 5 and takes until about age 25 to fully develop, and that is that frontal lobe. That is the part of the brain that's responsible for logical thought, processing, cognition, thinking about a consequence before a behavior. That happens a lot later. So feeling emotions, getting our needs met comes first, and then language, critical thinking skills, and then lastly, that ability to say, hey, I really shouldn't bite someone, that's going to hurt them. This is the same part of the brain that finds me in the McDonald's drive-thru without me thinking about it, even though I said I was going to have a salad on my way home. It still is that part of the brain that takes a lot of time to develop, and is that part of our brain that's saying, hey, this is the right way or the wrong way to approach a situation. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't always work the way we want it to work, even as an adult. So going a little bit more in depth. So again, that frontal lobe is the thinking brain. That is the part of the brain that is just not really working in our infants and our toddlers yet. It hasn't developed. We start from the bottom up, so starting with that brainstem, which is responsible for fight or flight. It's their sensory motor and survival brain. That's the part of the brain in an infant that's going to cry out when they're hungry or they're tired or they're uncomfortable to say, hey, I have a need and you need to meet it. So that is the very first part of our brain. And when we flip our lid or we lose control as an adult, that is the part of the brain that is coming from. It's this fight or flight response. So the second part of the brain to develop is our feelings brain, and this is where a lot of our toddlers are living. I know my 2-year-old lives in her feeling brain a lot. My 6-year-old definitely still lives in his feeling brain a lot, but my 2-year-old is really feeling the feels. 2-year-olds live in this glass case of emotion. They're experiencing and feeling a lot of things, but they're not able to put words to those feelings yet. They're developing that capacity, but it's just not there yet. So this is what's responsible for emotional development, attachment, emotional regulation, impulse control, and empathy. Those are starting to develop in that feeling brain and then really hardwired in that thinking brain. And all of these are connected to biting. Most children bite because they're lacking emotional regulation. They're having a lot of feelings and they don't know how to express those, whether those are good feelings or bad feelings. And I shouldn't say bad feelings, there are no bad feelings, negative or positive emotions or feelings. So my son bit when he would get really excited. So he had that strong feeling of excitement and he didn't know how to label or handle excitement. So he would bite as his way of kind of regulating that feeling. My daughter would bite when she would get really angry. And she would bite anything. She'd bite her car seat if I was putting her in. She'd bite the carpet. She'd bite the floor. She'd try to bite the wall. She'd bite herself because she was feeling this intense anger and didn't know how to emotionally regulate it, didn't know how to put the words to it. So with my son, one of our first feeling words that I taught him was excited, and how to handle excitement, so that he knew A, how to label it. Hey, I'm feeling really excited right now, which allows us to express ourselves. But also then when you're excited, these are the things that you can do to control excitement, or to handle excitement rather than biting. Then impulse control is that ability to stop ourselves before we make an action. And that is really starting in the midbrain, but not fully developing until you get into that thinking brain. It's stopping myself before I bite. And that's really, really difficult for an infant or a toddler, because that part of the brain is just not working yet. So as the adult or as the parent, it's saying, hey, these are the signs that I'm seeing. When I see these signs, this is what it means. And that's typically when you bite. So here are some other ways that you can handle it. So it's noticing when my son would get really excited before the excitement would get too much, labeling it, helping him process it. It's removing those barriers. It's being aware that a new person coming in may set you off. So I'm going to pick you up if we're in a new situation. We're going to the doctor's office, and I know that that's a scary time for you. So I'm going to make sure that we bring a comfort item. I'm going to hold you. I'm going to work through that process with you so that you're able to have kind of a leg up on impulse control. And then empathy. It's developing that capacity to see somebody else's feelings and then to be able to then feel those feelings, to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And empathy begins in our 1s and 2s, but really doesn't fully come in until our preschool age years or even a little bit later. And that helps when you label your feelings as a parent and say, hey, mommy's really mad right now because you dumped out all of your milk all over your tray during lunchtime, or whatever it may be. Or when you bite me, I kind of over exaggerate this feeling of being sad so that you see that your bite affected me. And that starts to build empathy. Then you'll find that they start practicing on their dolls or things like that. And then seeing other children upset, they may show like, oh no, he's crying. And starting to develop some of that awareness that I know crying makes me feel sad, that probably makes him feel sad. And then even probably trying to offer comfort items to that other child or that other adult, because I know my passy helps me feel better. So here you can have my passy because that might help you feel better too. So again, this is where our 1s and 2s are really living, is in that feeling brain and that fight or flight. So I'm feeling all the feels, and then I bite, I'm going back to my brainstem. So before I bite, I'm living in my feeling brain, and then when I bite, I'm living in my brainstem. And that's why biting sometimes is involuntary, is because I'm going back to my brainstem and I don't really have control of what's happening. I just do things to get my needs met. So I'm still developing impulse control, empathy, and emotional regulation. So I need you as the parent to live in your emotional and thinking brain while I'm struggling, because when we go to our brainstem, things get a little out of hand. There might be yelling, we don't handle it the best way. So as long as we are staying in our thinking and feeling brains as much as we possibly can, I know as a parent that's really hard to do all the time. And I'm not my best self when I go to my brainstem. So then I have to do a lot of apologizing after as a parent to say, hey, I handled that the wrong way. Here's how I'll handle it better next time. But if we stay in our thinking and feeling brains, we're able to label that feeling and help them work through the problem instead of being part of the problem or part of the solution. But again, as a parent, I know that that is sometimes challenging. But for me, finding out why my child is acting a certain way helps me stay in my thinking and feeling brain and not go to my brainstem, because I know that there's a reason for the feeling. So why do children bite? So if you want to type in the chat box, maybe why you think that children bite, or why you think that your child's biting, or a specific child that you've worked with or seen. There are a lot of different reasons, but what is maybe one reason that you've seen? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'll give you just a couple of minutes in case you're listening from a device and your screen is dark or whatever it may be. Right, so maybe lack of language could be a reason that children bite. Yeah, we've already talked about a lot of emotions and feelings behind biting. They might be tired, exactly. So I like to say that my toddler gets hangry, so hungry and tired, making sure that she has lots of snacks and getting that nap time and bedtime appropriately, because no one is their best self when they're tired. That is for sure. So in the evenings especially, we get a lot of hangry toddlers, and my child loses herself. And it's a stressful time of the evening, and that's when my son would bite me the most, is when I was trying to cook dinner and he was looking for that attention from me. Yep, so the reason that children bite is to cope with a challenge or fulfill a need because of a lot of different things. So they are definitely seeking something or trying to escape something. There is always a reason for the bite. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not so obvious. So we're going to look at 4 types of biters. These are my friends Ben, Josie, Penny, and Alex, and they are all biting for different reasons. So we're going to learn about all of them and why they might be biting and how we can support them. So Ben is the experimental biter. This is oftentimes an infant or a young toddler. They're curious and just trying to figure out the world. So Ben says, I'm just curious and trying to figure out the world around me. Help me learn what is safe for me to put in my mouth, and by giving me a variety of toys that I can touch and taste. So Ben might be the little guy who bites your shoulder when you're holding him, just trying to figure it out. He might be the one who doesn't know that teeth are not involved in a kiss. Ben might be biting at the breast while nursing. He might just lean down and eat your arm or eat your face, just to say, hey, what is this? So infants and toddlers learn by putting everything in their mouth. So everything in their play space should be accessible for mouthing. But they also learn about people by putting them in their mouth sometimes. So Ben needs some help learning what is safe and not safe to put in his mouth. We don't put people in our mouth, but you can put this teether in your mouth instead. And giving him a lot of things that he can chew on and touch and taste. A variety of textures and foods as well. And when Ben does bite your shoulder or bite at the breast, of removing him from that situation right away and saying very firmly, but nicely, no, we don't bite, and then just putting him down and taking him away. My son was a biter during nursing. And so when he would nurse and bite, I would just remove him from the breast and say no bite, and then we were done with that session. He may want 10 minutes from then to nurse, but then that's a completely new session and he doesn't associate the two with each other. Typically when they're biting, in that situation, we have missed some other cues. I was always playing Candy Crush when he would bite me at the breast. I think it was his way of saying, hey, I'm done, but you're not paying attention to me. So removing him from the situation sets that expectation that you're not able to do that, and that's not okay. So meet Josie. Josie is a frustrated biter. She's feeling some feelings and doesn't know how to express them. So Josie says, I'm still learning how to label and express my emotions appropriately. You can help me by giving me the words to use when I'm frustrated, label my feelings for me, and praise me when I do the right thing. And additionally, by modeling our frustration and saying, I'm feeling frustrated right now, here is how I handle frustration, sends Josie that model of how to handle frustration appropriately. And this is true for all emotions, those positive and negative emotions, whether it's excited or frustrated or angry or happy or sad, overwhelmed. When we label those feelings and say, I notice that you're feeling angry. I know you're angry because of X, Y, and Z. Or I know you're excited because there's a fire truck on our street and that's really awesome. So we're labeling that emotion for them, helping them put words to it, giving them the time to use that word back with us, and then giving them ways to express anger, frustration, or excitement appropriately. When I am angry, I can stomp my feet, I can squeeze a pillow, I can take a deep breath, but it's never okay to put our teeth on other people. So giving them that tool to regulate in a way that is more positive. And then giving lots and lots of praise when they do make the choice to take a deep breath or squeeze a pillow or stomp their feet or squeeze their fist instead of fighting. And usually you see this around 2.5, that I'm going to bite and then I stop. Of really recognizing you wanted to put your teeth on me, but you chose not to. I really like that you chose to stomp your feet instead of putting your teeth on me. So letting them know that I noticed your hard work, and that was probably really hard for you to stop yourself, but I'm really proud of you. And Josie is very much living in her emotional brain as a frustrated biter. So here's Penny. Penny is the power biter. Sometimes I like the response I get when I bite. This is the child who bites and then we scream and then they laugh. They like that response. It makes me feel in control. And if you really think about our young kids, they lack a lot of control. Their day is scheduled for them. What they wear is chosen for them. When they eat, when they sleep is all chosen for them. So young children will find ways to gain control, and that's not a negative thing. It's a part of wanting to be able to do things by myself and learning that I am my own person. So find time during the day to give me control, like choosing my own clothes for the day or following my lead when we play together. So giving them that option. And I always say that for toddlers, it's giving your child options within a set of limits. So you're going to wear undies today. Would you like to wear the princess undies or the polka dot undies? I've given you a choice, but a choice again within a set of limits. You can't wear your bathing suit to the grocery store. You can wear this skirt or this dress. You can wear your Star Wars costume or your Superman costume, but you're not going barefoot to the store, whatever it may be. And then following their lead when we play. So allowing them to have control over how we play and what we play with, and being a participant in their play instead of leading their play. Anytime that we can give them a little bit of control, backs away the times that they are seeking control or seeking attention. And then it's also being very aware that if my child is biting because they like the response when I scream out, that maybe I don't give that response anymore. And even though it hurts really bad when they bite me, I'm going to just say very calmly, no bite, put them down and kind of turn my back to my child so that they're not getting that response that's going to fuel continued biting. Removing that response oftentimes tells them that they're not going to get what they want from doing that behavior, and then that behavior is eliminated. I did this with my son with spitting. As he would spit, and I would say that it's okay to spit, but you have to go to the bathroom and spit in the toilet. And as soon as it became a chore for him and not something he was getting a response that he liked from it, he stopped spitting. So it's kind of turning a yes or turning a no into a yes. That's fine, but I'm going to stop talking to you and put my back to you for a couple of seconds every time you bite me instead of screaming out or giving you this big elaborate response. And every child's different. For some children, I scream out and say, ouch, that hurt. They cry. They're never going to bite me again because they didn't like it. For other kids, they're going to laugh and be like, that was awesome. I'm totally going to do that again. Or I don't like the reaction I get from an adult, but when I bite another child, they drop the toy and I get it. Yes, it worked. Then I become the power biter. So it's taking away their power, but giving them power in other aspects of their life. And then we have Alex, the threatened biter. So sometimes I bite in self-defense because I don't know how else to communicate. Things can get very overwhelming for me. So spending extra time cuddling, offering me a comfort item and giving me the words to use and reassurance may be all I need. Typically, the threatened biter is a child who's a little bit more slow to warm. They're not going to jump right into a situation. They get overwhelmed very easily. and they need you as the adult to be right there close to them to help them work through that processing. So bringing comfort items where you go, not throwing them into an uncomfortable situation, prepping your child to say, hey, we're going to go to touch a truck today. There is going to be a lot of people here and a lot of noise, and I'm going to hold your hand and stay with you the whole time. And then giving them a lot of reassurance in the words to use. Sometimes the threatened biter may not have as much language or the ability to communicate in the heat of the moment. They may be a little bit quieter or more reserved. So it's allowing them that time to communicate and giving them the words to say, you know, you can tell mommy that you wanted the blue truck instead of the red truck instead of biting me. Or you can tell mommy that this is too much and that we need to walk away and take a break for a second. My daughter at under 2 would tell her brother too much when he would get in her face because she would want to bite him. And, you know, can't really blame her if your brother's all up in your business all the time. But she learned very quickly from my communication to say, hey, tell him too much, back away from me. And so she's able to use those words to say too much instead of using her teeth to tell him he's being too much. So those are our 4 types of biters. So before I move along, do you guys have any questions for me? Just kind of making sure that you're still there, still listening to me. I'll give you just a few seconds to type in that chat box in case you do have any questions. I'm here, good. Thank you. Kim, are you still with us? Chrissy, are you still with us? Yay, good. So we do have a question. It says, how do you know which type of biter you have? That is a great question. And sometimes it's a combination, right? My child's biting in this situation for one reason and then a completely different situation for another reason. And I think it's important to kind of take ourselves out of the heat of the moment and really look at what's happening. Who is here? What time of day is it? What was happening before the bite? How did I respond after? To then start to figure out, was it because we're really emotional? Is it because we're tired? Is it because I'm really fearful? Do I like the response that I'm getting? And then once you start looking at those things, then you're going to notice, okay, I'm starting to pinpoint it to this, this, and this. And then our reactions can be different depending on the type of biting. They're never going to bite for the same reason every single time. So to know, in this situation, I have the experimental biter, and then in this situation, I have the frustrated biter. So my reaction to each of those may look different dependent upon the type of biting I am getting in that moment. So great question. All right, so now we're going to look at responding after the bite. So my child is biting, and now what? So first, we want to respond by letting the child know that biting is not acceptable. And we need to react in a dramatic-ish way without yelling or violence. Very bluntly saying, no, I don't like that. Or no, that hurts mommy, or that hurts daddy. It is not okay to bite. I've used no, we do not put teeth on people. Really reserving our no's for situations where someone's getting hurt. If we use no a lot with our child, they stop listening to no. So we want them to pay attention. No, we don't bite. Or no, don't go run in the street. So that no demands attention instead of just a word that they hear all the time. And then they just start telling us no all the time because that's the word that they hear the most from us. So really reserving no for times like biting, hitting, running in the street, doing things that are very unsafe. So after we react in that way of that blunt, like, no, that's not okay, of removing your child from the situation. So either taking them off of your shoulder and putting them on the ground. My son would bite me in the kitchen when I would be cooking. So I would move him out of the kitchen or put him in a safe spot, giving him something else to do. Sometimes I'd put him in his high chair with some watercolors and some paper or some crayons and say, here is a safe place for you to explore while mommy cooks, because I can't prevent you from biting me, so I'm going to put you in a space that is safe and give you something to do that's appropriate. And then after that initial reaction and removal, we may suggest other ways for our child to express their feelings. So if you want down, you can say down, please, instead of biting me to tell me you want to get down. When you're mad or frustrated, you can stomp your feet or take a deep breath. Instead of biting, you can tell Sally you're angry at her for taking your truck. Because we know that toddlers don't bite, or do bite, they don't share. So turn taking and waiting are the things that we want to instill in our toddlers. So biting can happen a lot in those situations where someone takes something from another, and they may not have the skills to say, hey, that's mine, I was playing with that, and they may use their teeth to say that instead. And then if your child's biting another child and not just you, we want to take care of the child first by validating their feelings, by saying, it's okay to cry, that must have hurt, or it's never okay when someone puts their teeth on you. So that immediate reaction is going towards the child who was bitten and not the child who's biting, so that we're not feeling this need to bite for attention. And then after that, we offer love in an ice pack if needed or requested. I know my kids request ice packs for everything. I accidentally stepped on my son's finger last night because he was crawling on the floor in front of me while I was cooking. Apparently he has a problem with staying out of the kitchen while I cook, and he's 6 now, so whatever. And so he needed an ice pack. So then my daughter demanded that she accidentally hit her elbow and needed one too. Here you go, girlfriend, here's your ice pack. Totally fine, but often ice packs fix everything, even a Band-Aid. Most of the time bites don't break the skin, don't require anything other than a little TLC, but hey, if you're gonna feel better with a Band-Aid, go for it, girlfriend, you get that Band-Aid. And then this is also answering a little bit of that question again about how we know which type of biter we have, is really that key to prevention, is asking yourself, like, what happened right before this? Who was my child playing with? Were they playing with me? Was it dad? Was it a sibling? Was it another friend? Who was bit? Is it always the same person? Or is it different people each time? Because they may just think that mommy tastes delicious and no one else tastes as good as mommy. Or Charlie tastes way better than anyone else, but that's because Charlie's fingers are always in her mouth. Is there a reason behind this as far as a specific child or person? What was your child doing? Where was your child? Maybe it only happens at home, or it only happens at the indoor playground, or it only happens at childcare. Is there a specific place that we're seeing biting happening a lot? And then who is caring for your child? Is it because their response is different in someone else? Does it only happen when they're with grandma? Does it only happen when they're with mom? Does it only happen when they're with dad? Is there a specific response maybe that they're getting from a specific person that may be fueling the biting? And these are all questions that you can ask yourself to identify kind of which kind of biter you have, or the situation that's leading to the biting in the first place. So here are some strategies to respond based on your child's development. Oftentimes biting goes away once a language development happens. So the best thing you can do is give your child lots and lots and lots of words to label their feelings and emotions, but also just everyday language as well. And that happens through conversation. I am the parent at the grocery store that's constantly talking to my child about everything that we're doing. I probably sound silly to other people, but we learn language by hearing language used and hearing appropriate language to use. And not only that conversational language, but of labeling the feelings that your child might be experiencing. It's helping your child express his feelings in appropriate ways. So instead of biting, you can take a deep breath. Daniel Tiger has an episode on when you feel so mad that you want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And so that can be a really great tool, and most 2-year-olds can count to 4 and learn very quickly to take those deep breaths. And then those are skills that they continue using in the preschool and school age years as well. Giving your child a lot of age appropriate choices. So would you like to wear the princess undies or the polka dot undies? Do you want to color with crayons or markers? Do you want to color on paper or my notepad? But our table is not a choice, right? And then considering a speech and language assessment if you feel like the reason that your child is biting is because of a lack of language. I always cite on the air of caution. It's better to get the evaluation and know my child's totally on track than to wait, because a lack of language can really fuel the need to express ourselves in different ways other than speech. Because I don't have those tools to use, I'm going to pull other tools. And those tools may be hitting, fighting, having tantrums. All toddlers go through those, but children who lack language, they continue to draw on those tools because that's oftentimes what they have to pull from. So when in doubt, talk to your pediatrician about speech and language assessment or directly call for steps for that evaluation. They're great. I highly recommend it. There's no cost for the assessment. So if they come back and they're like, your kid's totally typically developing in speech, great. If not, and then you can make some steps after that. Helping your child cope with feelings of being overwhelmed. So some children do really well in crowds and others do not. So knowing your child and what they like and what they don't like, and if being overwhelmed is a trigger, then avoid loud noises, large crowds, limit sensory input, and then create cozy corners at home. So if they are needing a break, they know where to go to get that break. My son just wants to be at home. He doesn't want to be around people. He even hates going out to dinner because he just wants to be at home. My daughter wants to be with the people. Her favorite place is the mall. She could totally be fine out and about, skipping naps. She'll have her moment once we get home where she's going to lose it, but out with the people, she'll be totally fine. So I know that I have to tailor our approach differently, and there are times that my son's going to have to adapt to being around large crowds. And so we talk about what that might look like, and I might stair step it a little bit with him, where I know that my daughter is totally fine and she might be itching to get out if we're at home too much. So just knowing your child and how they cope with large crowds and large crowds and loud noises. There we go. Additionally, explaining the effects of their actions. So it's helping them link, when you bite me, that hurts me. Johnny is crying because you bit him. Helping them understand that cause and effect, and that starts with play. It's using a lot of cause and effect toys. And when you press this button, this thing pops up. Is able then for them to transfer that information to, when you bite me, I'm crying and it hurts me. That bruise on me is from you. And so that is the first step of building empathy, is understanding that a cause has a reaction. And I think it's also important, and sometimes this is really difficult, to provide that unemotional feedback. We're acting out of our frontal lobe and not out of our brainstem, because when we're acting out of our brainstem, that feedback is very emotional. When we're acting out of our frontal lobe, we're able to really compose ourselves and provide feedback that's very unemotional. And those emotions lead to them doing things to get that reaction from us. And our children know better than anyone how to push our buttons. And they're going to do it in a way that no one else can. And it's really frustrating. But I would rather my kids push my buttons than push their teacher's buttons. They can act like that at home as long as they don't act around other people that way, right? Providing lots of opportunities for active play. This is a big one. I get calls a lot for children who are biting in the winter when it's too cold to go outside, or when the adult perceives it to be too cold to go outside. It hasn't really been too cold yet, so we can still get lots of outside time, and it doesn't take very much. just helping your 2-year-old put their coat on and giving them that time to do it themselves, and then getting out the door and playing outside for 5 minutes is oftentimes just enough active stimulation for them to get that feeling out of needing to move their bodies. And there are ways to be active inside as well, like doing dance parties, jumping around. My daughter needed to go potty last night, and so she asked me to hop with her to the bathroom. Awesome, let's hop all the way to the bathroom. That was definitely that active stimulation that her body needed in that moment. There's also a lot of great indoor play spaces that are free that you can take your children to get out of the house and be active. So building activity into your child's everyday routines, even in the morning, at meal times, at bedtime, of how can we do things that are active. And even little 1-year-olds can do yoga. It's the cutest thing ever, but building some stretching or some yoga into your routine as well. One of our responses about the reason that children might bite is that they might be tired. So if that is the reason that we're anticipating that our child is biting, to address some of those sleep challenges. So planning for an appropriate bedtime, maybe gradually moving bedtime down earlier if we think that our child is too tired. Plan for naps and quiet time. Most 1s and 2s and 3-year-olds are still needing a nap. So even if they boycott nap for a week, we still offer it, and we still instill quiet time, and then they will pick it back up. So don't drop those naps and quiet time. They still really need that rest time for their bodies. And then avoid play dates or outings during naps or while your child is tired, because then you're just setting them up for maybe not a most successful outing. I really avoid going out during nap time and make sure that my children get a nap every day. My son doesn't nap any longer since he's 6, but he does still have quiet time in his room where he can play with Legos or have some downtime. And it's downtime for them, but it's downtime for us as a parent too. And then support healthy teething. From the time that a child is 6 months old till the time that they get their 2-year-old molars, they're getting teeth every couple of months. So infants and toddlers can't tell us, hey, my mouth hurts, because for them, their mouth always hurts, and that's normal for them. Where they're getting their 6, 7-year-old molars, they can say like, hey, I'm not used to having this feeling, and now I'm feeling this pain. What is this? A 1 and 2-year-old can't really communicate that to us. So it's being very aware of when they might be getting teeth and offering teethers, allowing our infants and toddlers to still have access to their passies as a way of soothing, but also of helping them self-regulate. My daughter has a lot of holes in her passies, which is telling me that we're getting ready to transition away from passy, but she's still really asking and needing for it. And until those 2-year-old molars all come in and she has other tools to self-regulate, like saying, I'm really mad that you took my toy, instead of hitting or having a tantrum, then I know that it's not time for passy to go away yet. And that will happen anywhere between 2.5 and 3. Offering frozen foods and wet washcloths can ease teething pain. I found with my first that giving some frozen peas and frozen blueberries instead of warming them up were a great tool to help them chew on something cold. A frozen bagel is also a great tool. Frozen mini pancakes, don't even warm them up, just give them to them frozen. Feels really great on the gums. And then provide oral stimulation by allowing them to mouth toys, and you can clean them when they're done. And then offering healthy snacks that crunch or are cold also helps meet that need for oral stimulation. There are some great books that you can read with your child to help them learn that we don't put our teeth on people. That is not in the heat of the moment or right after a bite, but more preventative. And here are a couple of those. Some of them are just about feelings in general, or listening to the feelings that your body is having, and then some specifically targeted at biting. The No Biting book by Karen Katz goes into why we don't bite, why we don't hit, why we don't do other things as well. But these are all really great tools for beginning to label our feelings and see biting from somebody else's perspective in a book instead of just our own perspective. Again, Daniel Tiger is fantastic. A little bit of TV a day is not terrible for a 1 and 2 year old, as long as we're sitting down and helping them understand what's happening. So Daniel Tiger is a great tool to learn calm down techniques. He has episodes not only about feelings, but also about going to the doctor, going to the dentist, going to the bathroom. I am pretty sure Daniel Tiger potty trained both of my children. Thank you, Daniel Tiger. So he is a really great tool to then have those conversations and use the same language that he's using. Like, when I feel so mad that I want to roar, take a deep breath and count to 4. And then the Sesame Street app is a breathing app that helps walk through, this is what happened, this is how it made me feel, help me take a deep breath. And you actually take a deep breath with the monster on the app, which is a great self-regulation app as well. So those are fantastic. And then 2 apps that help us understand our child's development, and then maybe able to notice those developmental concerns earlier or provide those strategies to help advance our child's development, are Vroom and the CDC Milestones. Both you can download for free in the App Store. The CDC Milestones Tracker is a way to put in your children's ages, and then you check mark once they've met a milestone. You can then use that to go into the pediatrician's office for your checkups and address any concerns, or you have that to say, hey, my child is developing appropriately, and here are all of the things that my child is doing. Vroom does something very similar, but then they also have like conversation starters or activities that you can do with your child that don't involve a lot of extra things. Just, you know, here is one just on babbling and the importance of babbling and talking to your child. And you can even set reminders to do activities with your child, which is really cool as well. So those I highly recommend. But I think it's important to also know when to seek help. So I have put my email on here. It's just laureng@childcareanswers.com. Write it down. If you forget it, you can always go to our website and email me directly from our website, or email anyone and they can hook you up with me and point you in the right direction. But it's important to know that if your toddler is continuing to bite, or the number of bites is increasing instead of decreasing over time, it may be a good idea to request an assessment from a child development specialist, of having me come out and meet you one-on-one. We can meet at Starbucks, McDonald's, whatever, kind of chat about what's going on and create a plan with you. And then additionally, if children are over 3 and still biting, or they're just now beginning to bite, they may need some emotional regulation support. So talking to your pediatrician might be the best bet at that point. But I can definitely help develop a biting plan and some strategies. And I think it's a lot easier for someone on the outside to say, hey, this is why your child's biting, than to see it when you're kind of in it every single day. But remember that there is no quick fix. Over time and with assistance, they'll stop biting, typically as language and social emotional development happens. Biting typically decreases, but they're going to learn appropriate ways to express themselves by giving them opportunities to express themselves, by labeling their feelings and emotions, and by us modeling ways that we can calm down as well. So again, remember that learning a new behavior takes time, regardless of why your child's biting, and for whatever reason, it is a behavior that they have adapted, and they have to learn a different behavior to express themselves. So that takes some time to develop that new skill.